have actually something that would draw us to this church or to our faith or to our belief. You evangelicals, the cults do a better job of this than you do. You know, I get really irritated at myself. There are people all around me that are losing herds of their lifestyle. What if you lost all of your cattle? And it could happen to us just as much here as they said it could happen down there. And we think it's impossible. Oh, it'll never happen here. The conditions could happen anywhere because we have a God that can do what he wants to do if he's in anything, and he is. Was your first thought compassion for the people hurting? Or was it, well, I'm sure glad we aren't in that. When somebody said, hey, do you want to donate something? It just bugs me. The Christians are flocking. The unsaved are flocking in relief and help. And what do we as Christians are doing? I hope you're doing something. But are we just glad that God didn't do it? And we'll pray for those dear people there. Man, I understand that. But you've been around me long enough to know I've been through a lot of this. And all of a sudden it's just terms. What got him to go, this kid is different? Wow, I can trust him. How many of you would trust a 17 to 20-year-old with all your money? You like that one, folks? Or your cattle, or your business. How many of you are still micromanaging the 17 to 20-year-olds? Because we're afraid they'll do something wrong. It's okay, hang in there. I'm about done. We don't think we can trust anybody that's younger than us. And here is a seasoned Army veteran saying, wow, this guy has something different. He honors God. By the way, he even know who God was? We say he later on, but how many gods could an Egyptian have had? By the way, we can have lots of gods in our thinking, but there's only one true God. There's a lot of good methodology out in this world. And you may wonder why I'm harping on this, because the next thing that's going to happen is all of a sudden Joseph has the trust and the respect and the faith of his officer, Potiphar. And in just a few seconds later, he finds himself in jail. You know how fast friendships and trust can change? Anybody know how fast it can happen? You haven't watched Hallmark then. It happens like this. It's called 1 hour and 47 minutes. It's called the drama moment. All of a sudden she walks by and she hears something, sees something, and the next thing you know, he doesn't love me anymore. I'm never going to marry again. I get tired of the drama of Hallmark. But anyway, that was a whole different thing. My time has fleeted quickly. It's getting warm and you're tired and you have things to do. But I just want to share something as I close this morning. There's an interesting trend in the public and in Christian thinking that we are a product of what we, and it might be eat, for example. And we may take on two things, organic versus commercially produced, or drink natural or what's commercially made. Although this is not a new way of thinking, every generation has done what it believes is better than the previous generation. The way of dealing with personal problems and public problems comes to light in how we choose to do so. But one thing that seems strange to me, that this line of thinking has not crossed over into the spiritual realm of thinking. And that thinking is called cause and effect. The Bible is actually one that coined the frame of thinking that says, what a man sows, he also reaps. That explains and validates why we have physical lifestyles, but nothing changes the challenge and the actions for our spiritual health. For example, failing to feed upon God's word makes one weak and sickly. Not making God a priority leads God to distancing himself from us. Not using our talents for God causes us to become self-reliant instead of God-dependent. What you sow as a present priority is what you will reap as the eternal reward. If your faith is in man's security, don't be surprised when it is put to test for God to show you that you cannot trust man's methodology. If your faith is in man's planning and not God's plan, be ready for faith-stretching lessons that only God can use to produce faith-filled life that pleases him. I see this a lot, and I just want to expose it as a thought to put in your coffer of thinking. We are a nation, and it's not just saved or unsaved, and that was a term we only understand, followers of Jesus and those who may not be, that we want a security for pretty much everything that we do. How many of you have ever bought a TV or any kind of appliance out there, and the last thing they ask you is this: do you want an extended warranty for this product? Now, how many of you does that irritate? How many of you does it go, man, it's just nice to know that if my TV breaks down, it'll be fixed? Because you can both have it. It infuriates me. Because what it does to me is say, I'm buying a piece of junk, then why am I buying this piece of junk? That's how I was raised. It's not the way everybody thinks. Okay, I just want you to know that. But if I'm going to buy something in a year that I know is going to break down, you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to buy the dumb thing. And if it breaks down in a year, maybe God is trying to tell me I didn't need to have bought it. Now, I know we want security from every mode and system. But have you ever had man let you down? Have you ever went to collect your insurance and they said, by the way, we don't cover that. Or that's not in our ironclad guarantee. Or that's not, oh, by the way, your warranty was just up yesterday. Or even the one that shocks you the most. You go to a hospital, you think you're covered, and the hospital says your insurance has dropped you. When's the last time you heard God do that to you? Now, is there a time that he has been silent, maybe on some things? Yeah. It still boggles my mind that this young man by the name of Joseph was willing to understand the cause and the effect. If I honor God, God honors me. Why did Potiphar see Joseph as a God man? Because Joseph honored God in his everyday commitments of life. But ladies and gentlemen, if we haven't studied what honors God in the last few weeks, you're not going to know what honors God. That's why we study God's Word. That's why we continually, because it helps us in every situation and every area of our life. And Joseph is going to have the biggest one put to test. And again, I said it last week. We didn't get there. But the challenge that God is working. The world is watching to see if what we as Christians say we believe about God's ability is method or if it really works. Father, thank you for the opportunity as we have gathered together. Thank you so much for people coming out. I know it's tough. A lot of tired eyes, a lot of tired bodies, and then you come into a warm building. What would you not want to do but fall asleep? Man, they've been through a lot in the stresses and the realities of calving cows. It hasn't been as easy as some years where we just go out and tag in the morning. Some things have taken place that we don't even know how to necessarily explain, with death and so forth. And there may be because of cold weather, it may be because of the damp soils. And we are maybe struggling through some of the challenges, and yet some people would just love to have some challenges other than flood waters to deal with. They would love to have some cows like the one producer of pork in Nebraska who, I think it was, and maybe I didn't get it exactly right, the terminology, had 700 and some sows, as it were, and the newscaster came and said, well, what are you doing? Well, we're trying to save what we can find. And they said, well, how many did you find? Well, how many did you have? Around 700. How many did you save? 14. Wow. If that's a sow, that's a lot of pigs that could be produced. And it may have been, they showed picture after picture of bloated cattle up against fences who drowned in flood waters, were crushed in the ice. There are people wondering how they're going to get them fed. We wanted those two same things as we've slogged across a meadow. Lord, there's some interesting things. But even sometimes in the missing of things, we've almost started to question, oh God, why? Doesn't seem right. And yet there are people, again, realizing all this stuff. It really wasn't that important, was it? Yesterday when I brought this load down here, I realized the only load that I actually needed was the first load with the essentials. All the rest of this is stuff. It's not an essential to life. Maybe it makes life convenient. It may allow me to do things. But sometimes we forget really as Christians that we are yours because you bought us with a price. We're to glorify you in our lives. Joseph did that. We are too. We are to have a message of who we are and to tell the world. And the best message that we have to preach is what that message has done and is doing in our lives. Whether it's as a church, and we are a church that people are watching. Are we restoring? Are we dealing with? Are we growing? Are we maturing? Because the church is struggling in a lot of areas, not only just here. And Lord, are we again really following the principles, not just the ones we know in our minds, but the ones that we're living by faith that work, forgiveness, restoration, and growth, and reaching out, and loving others, in the Great Commission, as it were, as we are going, spreading the good news of Jesus Christ. If we think, wow, we can't do this, bring us back to Joseph, a 17 to 20-year-old kid, going miles away from any of his heritage of thought to a place that he could have just given up and saying, I don't believe God because he put me in this position, but all of a sudden he's becoming a missionary and he's affecting people and they're watching, and that he's going to go through some more faith lessons even the next days or years to come that needed to be so that one day he could be who you needed him to be. And Lord, thank you. It's a tough process, but it's an important one, whether it's youth or mature Christians. So thank you again for the opportunity to gather together. As we leave, we may not get to gather together for a while. May not get to see the kids and have them sing with me. I may not be able to have each one in the next Sunday services because time and busyness and activities. I understand that. But thanks as the family gathered today that you were present with us and that we can enjoy being together. Because one day, wow, what a grand song service it will be, and what grand worship reunion it will be when we keep our eyes turned toward the one who saved us. In his name I pray.